Hello and welcome to this Thursday edition of Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and it's open forum both hours today. I know we've had a little bit of an odd week this week. We're changing things up on you, but today we will stick with our usual schedule, and delighted to have Jimmy Akin here with us to answer your questions. Jimmy, of course, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers. I got a stack of his books in front of me right here. This is only some of his books. Teaching with Authority, How to Cut Through Doctrinal Confusion and Understand What the Church Really Says. A Daily Defense, 365 Days Plus One to Becoming a Better Apologist. A great book if you're one of those people who just likes to have something short to read every now and then, all divided up into single page and very helpful defenses of the Catholic Church. And then, of course, the most recent one, The Bible is a Catholic Book. Jimmy, also, of course, the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, how's it going, Cy Kellett?
Very well, thank you, Jimmy Akin. What's dropping tomorrow on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World?
Well, tomorrow is a fifth Friday, and so we'll be dealing with weird questions. So it'll be a show with you and me on it, and we're going to be looking at questions like, did Jesus die for aliens, and can you extract DNA from the Eucharist, and things like that.
Weird questions is such a fun one. So fifth Friday, we don't get. How many of those do you get a year? Like two or three?
No, usually about 4.
Oh, really? Oh, all right. Mm-hmm. Well, I probably should have learned my calendar when I was a kid. But so weird questions tomorrow on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. If you're not familiar with Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, I think you'll love it. Head over there for some weird questions tomorrow. But Jimmy handles everything from ghosts and aliens to apparitions to matters of the faith, matters of science. You get some UFOs on there every now and then. It's a mysterious world, and Jimmy Akin covers it all. 888-3... Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, also, today is a special day.
Today's a special day?
It is, yeah.
Am I?
So today, for our Jewish friends, happens to be Tisha B'Av, which is a day of fast. Tisha is, so Av is the month, and Tisha B'Av is the day of the month that comes around every year on the Jewish calendar. On the Gregorian calendar, it falls either in July or in August, but it commemorates, it's a day of fast because it commemorates certain great calamities that happened in Jewish history. In particular, it commemorates the destruction of the temple by the Babylonians in 587 BC and the destruction of the temple by the Romans in AD 70. And according to Jewish tradition, they both occurred on the same day of the year, on Tisha B'Av. And so it's a day that Jewish folks around the world are fasting, and so want to extend our sympathies to them.
Yeah, I guess it's not one of those days where you say, like, Merry Christmas.
Happy,
don't say
happy Tisha B'Av.
No,
yeah.
no.
It'd be like Happy Ash Wednesday or Happy Good Friday.
Yeah, two great calamities. The destruction of the temple twice. Wait, now was the temple destroyed twice or 3 times?
Twice.
It was destroyed twice. Okay, so there's the Solomon's temple.
Right.
Oh,
that's the first one.
Right, and then the second temple period. The second temple is not all Herod's temple. It actually starts earlier, right?
Correct. Yeah. So after they came back from the Babylonian exile, they rebuilt the temple, but it wasn't as grand as it had been, and eventually Herod conducted a renovation project that greatly expanded it and made it more magnificent. And in fact, the rabbis had a saying that if you haven't seen Herod's temple, you have not seen a beautiful building.
What a loss to the world then. Well, thank you, Jimmy, for saying that. I thought that it was going to be like a holy day or something, and I had forgotten. You know, as a Catholic, that's embarrassing if you're the host of the show. But I feel okay that I'm not entirely up on the Jewish holidays, but I'm very glad to have you remind me, and so we can send greetings to our Jewish friends and listeners. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Open forum means anybody can call, by the way. That's part of what open means. It's got 2 meanings here. Open to anybody and open to anything. That's basically what it means. So 888-318-7884, the number. We've already got a bunch of callers for you, Jimmy, shall we?
Sure.
All right, we'll start with D in Rochester, New York, listening on Station of the Cross Radio there in Rochester. D, thanks for starting us off. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Yes, I'm wondering if you might have any information on a story that I heard on the, it was the, Gloria, on the Morning Glory show. She must have read it in a Catholic periodical about a former NASA scientist who had, through some unique thing in his research work with NASA, had I think it was a supernatural event, actually, when they were studying auras, and he became a Catholic priest. And I haven't heard this anyplace else. I have no other data on it, and I'm wondering if you have any information on that or know where I'd go. I'm not very tech-savvy either.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have any information on this, but I can give you a couple of pieces of advice for leads on it. The first one you might or might not be able to take advantage of, but the Google machine would be the first place I'd go. So I would go to google.com and type in some of the relevant terms like NASA, scientist, priest, and things like that, and see what comes up. And if you're, you don't have to be particularly tech savvy to be able to do that. Lots of folks do it even if they're not particular techies. So that might be an option for you. The other option, since you clearly know how to use a phone, would be call up the folks at Morning Glory and ask them. You might not, I don't know if you could call in on the air, but you could certainly call the producer and say, hey, I heard this story. I was wondering if you could give me some more information about it.
Because that does sound like one that Jimmy would know about if it were common. So I think you're going to have to do those things, Dee. Thanks very much. I know there was a NASA engineer who became a nun. I remember that story from a while ago, but I don't remember the details at all. So it's back to Google for you, Dee. But thanks for the call. 888-318-7884, our number, 888-318-7884. Up next, right here in Sacramento, California, listening on the Catholic Answers app is James. James in Sacramento, thank you so much for your call. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello.
Hi, James.
Hello. I'm just speaking about, because this is kind of relevant right now, because most churches have been closed down for the past almost 6 months. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I wasn't really going at all before, but now that the kind of churches are closed and I have no idea when they're going to reopen, I'm just kind of I don't know, out of it. And I was just wondering, it just doesn't seem, it seems like being motivated to
stay connected or practice your faith?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Well, I guess I can give you a number of pieces of advice. The first one is don't worry about your feelings. Feelings come and go, and we all go through periods where we're more or less excited about things. That's natural. But take action. That's the key thing. Find a way to take action based on your faith. And in particular, if it's a form of action that involves you with others, that can be a big help. Because when we make commitments to other people, like I'm going to show up for this event, whether it may be an online event, since it's not possible to get together in person a lot these days. But when we have appointments we've made with other people, when we have commitments we've made with other people, it helps keep us involved, and it helps draw us out of ourselves and become involved with others, which is one of the points behind the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. We shouldn't just be self-involved. We should be involved with other people. So I don't know, James, if you're living with other people or not. I mean, if you have a family that you live with, you could, and if they're people of faith, you could do some faith activities with them, like, say prayers. Obviously, there are lots of masses that are online daily, and you could, even check out daily masses if you want, but at least you could watch a mass on Sundays. And so that could be another way of staying involved. There are various Catholic forums online. We have one at Catholic.com. You could make friends there and become engaged there. You could go to the Catholic Answers Facebook page. We have a lot of people who are active there. You could join in the discussion there. You could, decide you're going to do have a certain prayer schedule for yourself. And, say, okay, I'm going to say this devotion or this prayer every day. That would be another way to stay engaged with your faith. You also can do study and reading. We have lots of great resources at Catholic.com. Whether you read them there online or whether they're books or videos you could order. We have the School of Apologetics. You could even take online classes to learn more. And so there are a bunch of ways these days to stay involved in your faith, even right from home. Also, I should probably mention there are Catholic podcasts and Catholic YouTube channels. And so there's a whole smorgasbord or salmagundi to use a fancy word, of things that you might want to check out that would all be different ways of engaging with your faith. And it's just a question of experimenting and find out, what seems to work for you.
Okay.
Well, I don't really find it really difficult communicating with other people because often we don't get along, and I don't really. It just seems like the majority of people don't care, and so that kind of is frustrating, and I don't really like it. It makes me just not want to try. It's like the majority of people just are.
James, are you young?
Yeah, I'm 20.
It may be that you haven't found your group yet. It sounds. I mean, probably not much I can add to what Jimmy had to say, but sometimes there are those years where you're still looking for your group, for your people, and you might be in those.
And the solution to that, rather than retreating, is to engage, even if you don't particularly feel like it, because you're not going to find your group if you just stay by yourself. So whether it's getting out online or getting out in person, it's understandable. There are these time of life issues, and they can come more than once in a lifetime. But the way to get past that is to persevere, to keep going, even if it seems a little difficult right now, or even if it seems a little discouraging right now. Sooner or later, there will be payoff if you keep trying.
God bless you, James. We have to go to a break, but thank you for the call. I hope that was helpful to you. We're here Tuesdays and Thursdays with Open Forum, and you're always welcome to call again. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more Open Forum questions for Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Prayer changes everything. We read in sacred scripture that when we come to God in prayer, He changes our lot. It isn't so much that the circumstances change. It is that we change, and therefore we see the circumstances differently. Prayer does everything for us. It is indeed the air that fills our soul, just as the oxygen fills our lungs. We can't do without prayer. To do without prayer means we languish and we die. God wants us to have life and to have it to the full.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Jimmy Akin's our guest this hour and next for Open Forum. And Jimmy also, in addition to the other things I mentioned before at the top of the hour, he made the first course in the School of Apologetics. He's the professor for the first course in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics. It's called Beginning Apologetics, and lots of people have taken it. It's really impressive. All over the world, people have taken this Beginning Apologetics course. And so now that so many people have taken it, we've got so much positive feedback on it. The idea here was, well, let's make one of the classes from this full course that Jimmy did free, and people could take that free class, and maybe they'll find out, hey, this is for me. So you can go to the School of Apologetics at schoolofapologetics.com. You can always find us there at schoolofapologetics.com. But if you want to just have a quick place you can go to take this free class from Jimmy's Beginning Apologetics course, just go to catholic.com/free trial, catholic.com/free trial, and you'll go right to where you can sign up and get that free class in Jimmy's Beginning Apologetics course. 888-318-7884, the number 888-318-7884. Tommy in Oh, I'm going to try it. I'm going to say Dothan, Alabama, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Does that sound at all like the way you pronounce it, Tommy?
Yes. Hello.
Oh, I did it. Okay, good. All right. Your question for Jimmy.
Really? I'm surprised it's
I'm
not
sorry,
Dothan.
Dothan?
Yeah.
It's Dothan, Alabama. I'm
Oh.
a little bit hard of hearing, but I'll try my best.
Oh, so you're doing fine. All right. Dothan, Alabama. And Tommy, your question for Jimmy.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Jimmy. It's a pleasure to meet you at last.
Thank
my
you.
question was in regards to unification. I'm Greek Orthodox, but I was Roman Catholic. And of course, in the Orthodox tradition, we pray for the unification of the East and West daily.
Mm-hmm.
That's
awesome.
That's the overall hope. Of course, we have mostly in nowadays very small quorums, but a big quorum is papal infallibility.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, do you think that the Roman Church would accept, of course you can't answer that, but do you also in the Roman Western Church pray for the unification of the Eastern churches?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. Both Eastern Orthodoxy and other Eastern churches have a great deal in common with the Catholic Church. We have many bonds of unity between us, and we definitely recognize that Christ wills the unity of all of his followers, and so we want to do everything we can to encourage full communion with each other, and that takes a variety of different forms. It obviously includes prayer. The Catholic Church has various efforts towards ecumenism, towards promoting unity between different Christians. In fact, there's even a department, the fancy word is a dicastery, but there's a department at the Vatican in Rome that is devoted to promoting Christian unity. We have various conferences, we have various dialogues with different groups to try to, sort out differences and see what can be done to reach a common understanding, to heed St. Paul's exhortation to have one mind in Christ. And so this is very definitely a concern of Christians here in the West, including Catholics.
Because, of course, the important notion, certainly for me anyway, is that the two churches are of apostolic origin.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the key bonds between us, yes.
Yes.
And I'll just add, Tommy, the Eucharist as well, because I got some emails recently from a community of an Orthodox community saying, make sure that you let people know that we believe in the Eucharist just as you do and share in it just as you do. I don't know why they got the impression that we didn't think that here at Catholic Answers, but we do. There's so much hope. I hope that we will be in full communion before too long, Tommy. Thank you so much for the call and for the questions. Our number here, 888-318-7884. I'm going to go to Doug in Middleton, New York, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Doug, thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, thank you, Jimmy, for all that you do. My question is, I was wondering if you could comment on Catholics attending weddings outside of the church or civil weddings. My situation is my niece is getting married by a judge, and we're not particularly close. She's not practicing, but I feel kind of confused on whether I should attend, and if I do attend, if I should be giving a gift. I don't want to create unnecessary strife with family by not attending, but I'm always sort of confused about what the right thing is to do, and I was wondering if you could just comment on the church's position on those matters.
The church doesn't have an explicit instruction on this, and so consequently we have to resort to the principles of Catholic moral theology to navigate questions like this, and different people will have different views. I can tell you what my view is. So the way the law is written, if a Catholic is getting married outside the church and does not have a dispensation to have a non-Catholic wedding, then the marriage is going to be invalid. Now, there is actually an exception to that for if it's an Eastern Orthodox wedding, but this is not an Eastern Orthodox wedding. This is a civil wedding. And because it sounds like she's getting married outside the church without the needed dispensation, the marriage would be presumed to be invalid. And consequently, I would say that to show up at the wedding and to celebrate it and to give a gift and do things like that would communicate to her the idea that what she did was valid, that it's a real wedding and that she doesn't need to do anything to take care of the situation. And that's not true. She does need to do something to deal with the situation. She would need to get her marriage convalidated. And so consequently, I would view it, if I attended such an event, I would view it as a form of false witness. And therefore, I personally would not attend such an event. I wouldn't give gifts. I wouldn't, celebrate it. I would certainly be polite in the future. I would, you mentioned you're not particularly close. I would do what I could to, be loving and give the person a good witness, and hopefully down the line somewhere, maybe help them deal with the situation and repair it. But I personally would not attend a wedding or celebrate it in this way because it wouldn't be valid, and I would view it as a form of false witness on my part to act in a way that implied that it was.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that was helpful to you, Doug. Appreciate the call. The number here, 888-318-7884. It's open forum. And up next is Elaine in Lima, Ohio, listening on Holy Family Radio. Elaine, thank you for your call. Your question for Jimmy Akin.
Yes, thank you for your show. I was just wondering about how it came about that priests wear like the black robe and the white collar. How did that happen? How did they start that?
It's simply a matter of custom. Different colors have different meanings in different cultures, and here in the West, in Europe in particular, the color black has a certain solemnity to it, and consequently, it seemed appropriate for priests who perform a very solemn duty, or actually a set of solemn duties, to wear black. Also, the collar is another distinctive thing that they can wear that sets them off and, lets you know you're looking at a priest and not just somebody who's dressed in black. And there have been different forms of the collar over the course of time, but it's just something that evolved. I don't have specific dates. I'd have to do research on that, but those are some general themes that I would mention in terms of how it all developed.
Okay, Elaine?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Elaine. 888-318-7884, the number. Kevin in Waukesha, Wisconsin, watching on YouTube. Kevin, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello, Jimmy. I've attended a charismatic, I guess you'd say, charismatic service, split up into 2 to 3 worship songs and then an extended sermon. This has been extremely different from the Catholic Mass, which is appears to be more about the sacrifice in a very solemn event. What do you think that that charismatic churches are missing out in their service that Catholic Mass provides?
Well, they're missing the Eucharist. They're missing the real presence of Jesus Christ himself, because non-Catholic charismatic services, they aren't, at least the vast majority of them, they're not going to have a validly ordained priesthood, and so they're not going to be able to consecrate the Eucharist. So they're going to be missing the real presence of Christ and the graces that flow from that. That's not to say there's not grace in such services. God can give his grace to anybody, but they are missing something that's fundamental to Christian worship that Jesus Christ himself gave us. And that's important if you're missing something like that. Also, they are lacking the rich heritage of Christian liturgy that has come down through the ages. And it's not just Catholics who share this. As we mentioned earlier, Eastern Orthodox have liturgy that shares the same principles and traditions that come to us from the early church. So do other Eastern Christians. Unfortunately, the charismatic Pentecostal movement outside the Catholic Church has largely cut itself off from those things. And so they're missing also elements of authentic Catholic teaching. They have many elements of Christian teaching that are true, but they don't have the fullness of the Christian faith. And so they're missing out in a number of respects. And that's unfortunate. But we also want to recognize that they are fellow Christians and God does work in their lives. And hopefully we can build more bridges and maybe one day have full communion.
Thanks, Kevin. It's open forum today on Catholic Answers Live. Our guest both hours is Jimmy Akin. And if you'd like to get your call in, 888-318-7884 is the number. We got 3 lines open right now, 888-31-TRUTH.
Catholic Answers Live.
We did it again. We've got great podcast episodes this week for you over at Catholic Answers Focus. Monday's episode is a joyful conversation with Father Hugh Barber about Christian joy. What is it and how can you get it? Then on Wednesday's episode, John DeRosa gives us helpful tips for dealing with the person who says belief in God is just wishful thinking or the opiate of the masses or a crutch for weak minds. You get the idea. Subscribe to Catholic Answers Focus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, or visit our website at CatholicAnswersFocus.com.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. It's free, and you'll have instant access to our daily broadcast, the schedule of upcoming shows, and you'll even be able to search the archive and listen to thousands of past shows. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Many Catholics ignore the Bible. They say they have the Church instead. But we should embrace sacred Scripture, not just as the revealed Word of God, but as a Catholic work, intimately connected with the Church from the earliest centuries. In The Bible is a Catholic Book, apologist Jimmy Akin shows how the Bible cannot exist apart from the Church, in its origins, in the truths it contains, in its careful preservation over the centuries. Scripture is inseparable from the Catholic faith. This is fitting, since both come from God for our salvation. If you're a Catholic who sometimes gets intimidated by the Bible is a Catholic Book will help you better understand and take pride in this gift that God gave the world through the Church. After all, Catholics are the original Bible Christians. Order your copy of The Bible is a Catholic Book today by calling 1-844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
And I'm Deacon Harold. The Morning Glory team asks, could you give a gift that keeps on giving?
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, Jimmy Akin, our guest, and we are just moving through questions today, so there's lots of opportunities to get on. 888-318-7884, the number. Non-Catholics are very welcome to call. The show is called Catholic Answers Live, and I'm sure Jimmy will do his best to give you a Catholic answer, but the questions can come from anywhere, and they can be about anything. 888-318-7884. Let's go to Frank. Oh, yeah, Frank in Buffalo, New York, listening to EWTN, Channel 130 on Sirius XM satellite radio. Frank, your question for Jimmy. Hi, Frank. No, did I do it again, Nick? Did I push the wrong button? No? All right, well, we're going to come back to Frank then. Hang on, Frank. Don't worry. When you hear this, we're not getting rid of you. We're just putting you on hold. Let's go to Missy. Wait! Missy in Stamping Ground, Kentucky, listening on the Catholic Answers app. I can remember
both Missy and Stamping Ground, Kentucky.
And this
Two great names.
I never forget this because she's our only caller from Stamping Ground, Kentucky. So I am very familiar with Missy, aren't I, Missy?
Oh, no. Okay, then you'll remember me going forward. And I always have lots of questions, so that might not be good.
Well, questions are the show's
My
called
question-
Catholic Answers. We need questions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I didn't tell you before, but I'm new again to the Catholic faith. I grew up Catholic and I didn't understand it, walked away from it, and God led me back to it. And something that I think tripped me up, and something that I didn't understand that I think a lot of Protestants don't understand. So now when I speak to people about my conversion, it's hard for me to communicate, is the word prayer. When Protestants hear the word prayer, it's a word that's only reserved to God, speaking with God. But as we use it as Catholics, it could be communicating with people in the community on the other side. And so it got me to thinking, well, what is the actual meaning of the word prayer? Is it just speaking to someone in the spiritual realm? I mean, what is that? What does that word mean?
Okay. Well, words have more than one meaning, and the meanings change over time. And so there's a rule among linguists, people who study language, that the meaning of a word is determined by its usage. That is, how people are actually using it. Because you kind of have to pay attention to this, because words can radically change meaning over time. The English word nice, for example, it means something good or pleasant, but it didn't originally. The word nice comes from a Latin word, nescius, which means ignorant. Someone who doesn't know is nescient. And so that obviously is not the meaning of the word nice in today's English, even though that is where the word came from. And so what you have to do is look not only at the origin of the word, but also how it's evolved in its meaning in the different communities that use that word. So in the case of pray, it comes from a Latin word, precare, which means to ask. And so if you ask or beg or entreat or, any similar thing, any kind of request you're making, you could use the word precare in Latin to describe that, doing that action. And so that's where the word prayer comes from. It's from a word that means to ask. And originally, that's what it meant in ordinary English. And you can see this in a variety of English usages that go back a ways in history. For example, if you ever watch British dramas, that are period dramas, so they're set in the past, you may see a character say something like, prithee, or I pray you, do this. Prithee is a contraction of I pray thee or I ask you. And similarly saying, I pray you, do this. Well, that's, again, it's an older use of pray. It just means to ask. And that was normal in English down to the time of the Protestant Reformation. And so, and even afterwards. And so historically, we would talk about praying to the saints just because we're asking the saints for their intercession. We're making a request that they also present our requests to God, just like we'd ask fellow Christians here on earth to present our requests to God. And so it's just an extension of that principle. We're not worshiping them. We're just asking them to intercede for us. And that usage survived in the Catholic Church. So Catholics have continued in the English-speaking Catholic community. We've continued to use the word pray the way it was historically used before the Reformation. So we've just continued that perfectly normal usage of it. The same thing happens in some other situations. The legal profession has also preserved this use of pray. So if you file a motion with a court and your lawyer drafts the motion for you, down at the bottom of the motion, it will say, my client, meaning you, my client prays that the court does thus and so. So your lawyer is just continuing to use the historic meaning of the word pray in English, which has survived not only in British English and in the Catholic community, but also in the legal community. But it's true in the Protestant community, the word pray has become more exclusively associated with God. And so the way the word pray is used by many Protestants, for them, what it means is an act of worship that is due only to God. And so that's simply how they use the term. And what we need to do to help people understand this is that's not the only use of the term. The term didn't originally mean an act of worship. It just meant to ask. And Catholics have continued to simply use its historic meaning, as have other people, including people in England in some cases, and also including in the legal community.
How's that?
So
Missy?
our usage is okay too, and it doesn't mean we're worshiping someone other than God.
Missy?
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you keep calling, because I'm glad we never used to get calls from Stamping Ground, Kentucky, and now we get them regularly. So I'll look forward to your call again. Thanks, Missy. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Scott in Irving, Texas is next. He's listening on 9:10 a.m. there in Irving, Texas. Scott, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hello, gentlemen. My question is, I'm going to flush it out a teeny bit more than I said to the call screener, but I go to the Adoration Chapel pretty frequently, even now, and the first thing I do is I say, Jesus, thank you for dying on the cross for my sins, which is kind of blasphemy to begin with, because I don't even know what that means. So Jesus paid the price for our sins, died for our sins. Doesn't mean that we can sin as much as we want, of course, and it doesn't mean that that we're not going to sin anymore, because we are. So can you explain that phrase to me, Jimmy, if possible?
Sure, and I would say be a little easier on yourself. It's true that Jesus died for our sins. I mean, the New Testament teaches that, and so it's not blasphemy to say something that's true. You may not understand what it means, but it's not blasphemy because it's true, and truth is not blasphemy. So the question is just, how can we understand this better? Well, there are a bunch of different proposals about exactly how we're saved by Jesus dying for our sins. In theology, those are known as theories of the atonement. And there are a number of different theories of the atonement that have been proposed over the course of time. They have different elements of truth in them. Most of them, at least, get at part of what it meant for Jesus to die for us, but not all of them express it as well as they should. But basically, I would say this. What it means when we say Jesus died for our sins is that God used his death in such a way that it became possible for us to be forgiven for our sins and be saved and go to heaven. So whatever else it means that because Jesus died, God forgives us, or it's possible for us to be forgiven, assuming we repent and so forth. But because Jesus died, it enabled us to be forgiven of our sins and to be saved and to go to heaven for all eternity to be with God.
Okay. I've thought of that before. So what that means when you say that is that nobody before Jesus is in heaven. That's basically what you're saying.
Well, no, they are now. The conventional understanding is because God has mercy on people in all ages. And so he made a way for people before the time of Christ to also be saved. And so the standard understanding is that those people, if they died in God's friendship before the time of Christ, that they went to a special place of rest and comfort that was not the full glory of heaven. But then, when Jesus came and actually died for their sins, that made it possible for them to go to heaven too. And so they went from the place of rest and comfort where they had been waiting and then moved to heaven. Jesus took them to heaven, and so they're in heaven now. And they were forgiven for their sins ahead of time because Jesus would one day pay the price for their sins. And we're kind of the opposite of that. We're looking backward on something that he did to pay the price for our sins. It's kind of like the difference between a credit card and a debit card. If you buy something on credit, you haven't paid for it yet, but you still get it. And that's kind of like what the people living before the time of Christ's sacrifice had. They were forgiven their sins ahead of time, even though Jesus hadn't paid the price yet. Now that Jesus has paid the price, when we are forgiven, it's like using a debit card where you already have the money in the bank and now you're drawing it out and getting something with it. So when we're forgiven, it's because Jesus has paid the price for our sins. When they were forgiven, it's because Jesus would one day pay the price for their sins. But it's all because of Jesus.
Thank you, Scott. I hope that was helpful to you. Appreciate that call. We got to take a quick break, and I got to let listeners know that there's only 2 days left in the July sale on shop.catholic.com, where they've got a bunch of stuff there for $5 and $10. Books, CDs, DVDs, a whole bunch of stuff. If you head over to shop.catholic.com, just look for the $5 and $10 category. But when July ends, the sale ends. So visit now at shop.catholic.com.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul's Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Prayer is a variety of forms of communication. Sometimes we simply greet one another, "Hi, how are you?" And we say small, short prayers similarly to God. Other times we engage people in deep conversations. Other times we engage our families in family reunions and big meals. Similarly with God, we engage Him in Eucharist and deep meditation as well.
Bit of a dilemma. You know what my dilemma is, Nick? Next caller is from Milford, listening on 990 AM, but almost every state in America has a Milford in it, so I have no idea what state this is. John in Milford, are you there with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah. What state are you in?
Michigan.
Oh, Milford, Michigan. All right. All right, John, go ahead with your question for Jimmy, please.
My question is, scientists brag about how they recently were able to hear echoes of the Big Bang in space, and yet science also says that they can't hear anything in space, that sound doesn't conduct in space. It doesn't travel. Do you have a Catholic idea about it?
Yeah, well, this isn't so much a matter of faith. It's a matter of science, and that's fine because I love talking about science. Actually, sound can travel in space, but it's much more limited than what we can do in an atmosphere. Because in order for sound waves to travel, sound waves disturb the air that we hear, or if we're underwater, the water that we hear. But they need matter of some kind for the waves to travel through. And even though there's not much matter in space, there is a little bit. And so it's hypothetically possible to make sound in space, but not very easily. And for practical purposes, yeah, sound doesn't really travel in space, at least not in most situations. And so when you hear people talking about the echoes of the Big Bang, they're actually not talking about sound echoes. They're talking about another type of echo. Because even though sound needs matter of some kind in order for the waves to move through that matter, there are other kinds of waves, and those waves don't need matter to move through space. Gravitational waves do not need matter to move through space, and radio waves do not need matter to move through space. And so actually, when people talk about hearing the echoes of the Big Bang, what they're referring to is radio waves. When the Big Bang occurred, according to the standard scientific understanding, there was a massive release of energy, including and originally this energy was much higher frequency, but as the universe has expanded and cooled, that frequency has come down. And so today, all of that radiant energy that was released when the universe started expanding, that energy is still there. It still fills space. And today, it's down in what's called the microwave frequency. Microwaves are very, very small, hence the word micro. And this energy is currently about 3 degrees Celsius above absolute zero. And in the 1960s, because people had predicted, if the Big Bang happened, we should be able to find the energy that was left over that filled space. And in the 1960s, they did. There were a couple of scientists working for Bell Labs, for the phone company. And they had a radio telescope that looks at the universe in radio waves rather than in visible light. And they found this microwave background radiation that was coming from every point in the sky. And they checked it out really thoroughly to make sure that it's not like a problem with our machine or something, that it's not adjusted right. And they found out, no, their machine is adjusted totally fine. But because this energy was coming from every point in the sky, from every direction, they realized eventually this is the echo of the Big Bang in radio waves. So today we call that the cosmic microwave background, because it's just background energy that's everywhere in the universe in the microwave part of the spectrum. And this was considered confirmation for the theory of the Big Bang. And actually, those scientists won the Nobel Prize because they found this important confirmation of the Big Bang. More recently, we've been able to study the cosmic microwave background in a lot more detail using satellites we put up in space. And today you can even find pictures that map the entire sky and show you the cosmic microwave background. Also, if you're using a radio, a normal radio, or at least a traditional radio, and you adjust it so that it's not on a station so that you can hear static, part of that static is actually the echo of the Big Bang in radio waves.
So how does this affect a Catholic point of view?
Well, it really doesn't, because the Catholic point of view is that both the faith teaches us certain things and science can teach us certain things, so we don't pit the two in opposition to each other. The church has looked at the texts in the Bible, like Genesis 1, where it talks about creation, and has said, yes, that really does tell us what the Creator did. God really did create all these things. But it presents the work of the Creator to us in a kind of symbolic way. And so the Catechism of the Catholic Church says that Genesis pictures the creation account as a symbolic group of 6 days. But it's not meant to be a scientific account, and so we would then look to science to help develop a scientific picture of what happened. So the Bible gives us a true account of what happened from a theological perspective, but it's not a literal scientific account. And so we need to look to science to help us develop that. And the discovery of the Big Bang in the 20th century, it's not a teaching of the faith, and the results of science are always provisional. So one day someone could propose a different theory, and if they can back it up with evidence, that would be fine. But right now, most scientists are convinced that the evidence supports the idea of the Big Bang. The discovery of the cosmic microwave background was one of the things that convinced them, and the Catholic Church doesn't have a problem with that.
John, I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much for your question. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Up next is Mary Alice in Columbus, Ohio, listening on St. Gabriel Radio. Mary Alice, your question for Jimmy.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call. It's the first time for me with your show.
Oh, well, we're happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. My mother, she's passed away a number of years. She had a wonderful devotion to our Blessed Mother. I'm a lifelong cradle Catholic and all that. And my mother, with her prayers and the rosary and everything, it was a tremendous influence on my brothers and especially my sister and myself. And regarding our Blessed Mother, do we have any knowledge or information as to where and how she lived out her life after Christ ascended into heaven and obviously before she was assumed into heaven? Do we have any information about her, about all of that?
Well, we have a little bit. We know from the end of John's Gospel, if you look at John chapter 19, where the crucifixion account is, that Jesus entrusted Mary to the beloved disciple. And the beloved disciple, we have good evidence that he was named John. Many people have thought that he was John the Apostle or John the son of Zebedee. But there's an argument to be made that he may have been a different John. In any event, he was someone who was an eyewitness of Jesus's ministry. He was very close to Jesus. And so Jesus entrusted his mother to the care of the beloved disciple as he was being crucified. From the cross, he looked down and saw the two of them there, and he said to the beloved disciple, "Son, behold your mother." And he said to his mother, "Mother, behold your son." And the text tells us that from that hour, the beloved disciple took Mary as his own. So he assumed custody of her. He would care for her in her later life because she was, getting older at this point. And so he took her into his own home and he treated her like his own mother. And the standard understanding is that continued to happen for the rest of her life. Now, there are two traditions about where Mary ended her life. One tradition is that she ended up passing on and then being assumed into heaven right there in Jerusalem. And so if you go to Jerusalem and you go to the Kidron Valley, which is up against the Mount of Olives opposite the Temple Mount, there's actually a tomb of Mary that's right there. That's one of the places that one tradition says she died and was assumed into heaven from there. But there's another tradition because John seems to have gone eventually to the city of Ephesus, which is in modern Turkey. And there is a tradition that Mary went with him to Ephesus, and that's where she ended her life. And so you also have traditions connecting her to Ephesus in modern Turkey. So that's what we know for sure, is that the beloved disciple took her into his care and continued to care for her afterwards. But then the tradition is mixed in terms of where did she go geographically and where was it that she ended her life and was assumed into heaven.
How's that, Mary Alice?
No. Well, that's amazing. That's wonderful. I didn't know about her possibly traveling to Ephesus, but no, that's very interesting. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Mary Alice.
Well,
what? I don't know what happened there, Nick. Okay, Jimmy, however, I just want to get at something because some people will wonder about this. It's possible that the John referred to in John's Gospel is John the Presbyter?
Yes, John the Presbyter is a name that's been given to a figure that some of the early church fathers talk about, including Saint Jerome. In fact, Saint Jerome thought that John the Presbyter, different than John the Apostle, was the author of 2nd and 3rd John. And some people have suggested maybe he's the author of all of the books of John in the New Testament. But that's a matter that scholars debate. Pope Benedict, for example, talks about that theory in his book, Jesus of Nazareth, Volume 1, and he indicates it's open, that theologians can talk about this. We do know, obviously, there was John the Apostle. The Gospels talk about him explicitly. And then there's also indications that in the church fathers that there was this second John who was another eyewitness of Jesus's ministry who's called John the Presbyter. But exactly who he was and what his role is in the Bible and outside the Bible is something that people speculate about, but we don't have definitive answers on.
All right. Mary Alice, thanks again for the call. Thanks to everybody who called. Folks on the line, you can hang on the line because Jimmy is going to stay here for another hour. So if you just hang there, we're going to get to your question in just a couple minutes. There's 2 lines open, so if you're not on the line, you're welcome to call 888 318-7884. It's open forum today with Jimmy Akin, and that means open to anyone, whether you're Catholic or not. I should say, even if you're not a believer, if you don't believe in God and you have a question about the Catholic faith or Catholics' beliefs, or even why people believe in God, it's all welcome here. Open forum means open. 888-318-7884. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, Open Forum. Jimmy Akin, our guest. Tomorrow we're going to do 2 hours of Open Forum for non-Catholics. So if you are non-Catholic and you can't call today, because non-Catholics are welcome every day, but some days we just hold those lines for non-Catholics, so you can call and ask your questions about the Catholic faith. Today, a full hour of Open Forum that is open to every single human being on Earth. That's 7 and some change billion people. So, and you're one of those. So go ahead and dial 888-318-7884 if you have a question. Your questions are welcome on a whole broad range of things. Certainly any question having to do with faith, with the religious life in general, with the moral life, with the teachings of Christianity, with the person of Jesus, all welcome. But Jimmy's open to just about anything, as you could tell, because he answered a question on the Big Bang a little while ago. 888-318-7884 is the number. Jimmy, you ready to get right back into it?
Oh, sure.
All right, let's go to Pam in Mansfield, Ohio, who's been watching on Facebook. Pam, you there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, I just got to tell you something. I see from your question, Jimmy wasn't here yesterday. So if you want to, I know you wanted to.
Oh, okay. Well, yesterday someone had called in and asked about marital, like couples.
Are you still married? Yeah,
heaven.
when you're in heaven. Are you still married? Yeah.
Yes, and I understand that concept quite well. What I was hoping he could expound upon is other people in the family that we have. For instance, people who have deeply hurt you. I have a narcissistic parent who I have had to deal with quite a bit with different issues here. So when I go on to heaven, will those issues, will I still know of them, or will they be erased? I don't know. Can you explain that to me, please?
Well, we don't have any evidence that we'll know less about things in the future. The information we have from, for example, the Gospels indicates that we'll actually know more in the next life than we know in this one. And so I wouldn't expect to forget what happened, but I also would not expect for it to hurt anymore, because one of the things that the Bible teaches, and if you want to look this up, you can find it near the top of chapter 21 in the book of Revelation, is that everyone who enters the heavenly city, New Jerusalem, is freed from suffering. And John points out that there will not be crying or pain or tears anymore, because the old order of things will have passed away. And so even though we may be aware of things that happened to us in our lifetimes that were painful at the time, they will not be painful to us in heaven. And so we don't need to be afraid of that. We don't need to worry about that. And if our loved one is with us in heaven, or our family member is with us in heaven, they're going to be transformed, just like we're going to be transformed. So we're not going to have the flaws in heaven that we have right now. God is going to heal us. He's going to enable us to become fully loving the way Jesus is fully loving. That's part of what it means to say that we're going to be transformed to be like Jesus. We're going to be as loving as he is. And so if you have a narcissistic parent, here's hoping the narcissistic parent makes it to heaven. And in that process of going to heaven, it may involve a stop in purgatory, but God will heal your parent so that the parent is no longer narcissistic, and so the parent is fully loving. And as part of purgatory, the parent would realize just how bad their actions were and just how badly they impacted other people, and would feel sorry for that and would repent of that and regret that. And so that would enable, if you both make it to heaven, a reconciliation to be possible that might not have been possible in this life. But at that point, there will be no more pain, there will be no more tears, there will be no more crying, and there will be abundant love from everyone.
Okay, Pam?
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for starting us off, Pam. The number is 888-318-7884. It's open forum. Up next is Zach in Dallas, Texas, watching on YouTube. Hi, Zach.
Hi.
Got a question for Jimmy?
Yes. So if there's time, I had two hopefully quick questions, and the first one would be in Genesis when it says let me pull this up. It says, God took Enoch to himself, and he was seen no more. That's Genesis 5:24. What does that mean? Does it mean he went up into heaven, or he was set apart? Because it seems like he didn't die, but was taken.
Yeah, and it's made clear in other books of Scripture. We get a little more information about this. A more literal translation is Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And people have discussed possibilities about what that might mean. One of the things we know for sure is it means he didn't die, because the book of Hebrews tells us that. If you look in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, it gives us a little bit more information about Enoch, including the fact he didn't die. And the translation will vary. In some translations, it will say that Enoch was translated, and what that means is open to some interpretation. In other translations, it will say Enoch was taken up, which would suggest he went to heaven. If you look in the book of Sirach, in chapter 44 and also in chapter 49, it has a little bit of information about Enoch, and in one of those chapters, in chapter 49, it says that he was taken up from the earth. At least that's what it says in the translation that I've looked at most recently. I haven't been able to check the Greek. I haven't had the opportunity to do that to see, does it specifically say in Greek he was taken up from the earth, which would, again, point to him going to heaven. Even though it's before the time of Christ, it would be another early exception, because God is God and he can make exceptions if he chooses. We do have evidence of another exception that's at least similar to this, where God takes the prophet Elijah to heaven, and there it's clear that he goes to heaven because it uses the Hebrew word for heaven, shamayim. So it says Elijah got taken to shamayim, or to heaven, and that would be another exception, because God is God and he can make exceptions. So don't stress about the exceptions. Sometimes people do, and they really don't need to. But it's a little less clear in the case of Enoch, because it doesn't specifically use the word for heaven. But we do have these suggestions he was taken up, and certainly the understanding that he was taken to heaven was what people in the ancient world understood this to mean. In fact, there's a whole body of ancient literature known as the Enochic literature that's devoted to what happens to Enoch. And this literature is not in the Catholic Bible, but it very clearly indicates an early Jewish belief that that Enoch was taken up to heaven, and he got a tour of heaven. According to this, he saw God's throne itself, and so that was very definitely how people interpreted this in former centuries.
All right.
So what I don't understand is how someone could go into heaven before Christ dying. And
so the answer is it's an exception. Like I said, God can make exceptions if he wants. Now, in terms of the mechanics of how that would happen, well, we know that people, and you can go back and listen to the podcast of the previous hour where I talked about this, God could forgive people even before Jesus died. Kind of like using a credit card. They were forgiven in anticipation of what Jesus would do. And in the same way, God can take people to heaven in anticipation of what Jesus would do in the same way. So you could, if you want to think about it this way, you could say Enoch and Elijah went to heaven on credit, and eventually Jesus paid the price that would allow them to go to heaven, just like it's allowing everybody else to go to heaven who goes there.
All right. I hope that was helpful to you, Zach. We have to take a quick break, but we appreciate the call. I want to let you know, as I said before, just 2 days left in July, and all the July sales are going away. And it's hard to think of a more important one than we do in July than the Catholic Answers magazine sale. It's a great time to get your subscription, and a subscription is a great thing to get, especially if you've got anybody who maybe needs some shoring up of their trust in Catholic teaching in the home. Maybe they maybe just some who come by and visit. If you leave this magazine around, it's amazing what will happen when people just sit down and leaf through the pages. It's on sale right now. 1-year subscription, save 25% off the cover price, and that's $30 per year. We also include a free digital subscription and a free downloadable file with all the digital issues for the last 4 years. So you pay $30 for your 1-year subscription. You basically get that plus 4 years prior. If you do the 2-year subscription, it's $50, which means a 40% savings off the cover price. And then we also include the free digital subscription and a free downloadable file with all the digital issues for the last 8 years. So you pay for 2 and you get basically 10 years of magazine. You can do all of that at CatholicAnswersMagazine.com, but you've only got about 48 hours left to do that. CatholicAnswersMagazine.com.
Often unbelievers have a hard time reconciling the doctrine of hell with an all-good God. In fact, I've talked to Catholics who struggle with this. So what can we say to help? Well, first, the punishment of hell is not a kind of vengeance inflicted by God from without, but follows from the nature of sin. All those in hell choose it, and God's respect of man's free will doesn't contradict his goodness. Furthermore, it belongs to God's goodness to make a distinction between loyal and disloyal subjects, and to give their just deserts. What kind of a God would he be if he gave the same reward, heaven, to those who refuse to love him as to those who love him? He wouldn't be a good God. For these reasons, the doctrine of hell is not incompatible with God's goodness. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Hey Alexa, how many ways can I get EWTN?
You can get EWTN on television, via cable and satellite, on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Google Play. You can get EWTN radio in your car on Sirius XM Channel 130, and on the go on any mobile device with the EWTN app. And here's the best news. Now you can get EWTN's great programming on Me.
Got to thank Erica Olson for coming in and answering the phones and doing all the call screening today, because Marie still on her honeymoon, or I guess maybe we'll get her back Monday. Are we supposed to get her back Monday, Nick? Yeah, we think so. We'll get her back Monday. Erica asking me at the break if I would promote the cruise. That's just a cruel joke on me, because you know we can't cruise, and you know how bad I want to go. And come on, Erica.
I mean, come on, like, who's sadder, you or me? Like,
that there's no cruise?
There's I'm
no definitely
events.
sadder.
I'm the events planner, and there's no events.
I guess so. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. There's no events.
How sad is that?
I know, really. There's no events. There was no. Are they giving you other work to do? Are you having?
Well, hello,
Are you having to
I'm the
sweep
new
up?
call screener.
Oh yeah, I know you're also doing other work for Aline. I've noticed.
Yes, God bless Catholic Answers and
They
everyone
found stuff
here
for you to
for
do. Yeah.
still filling me with things to do.
Yeah. Well, we'll God willing, before too long, events will be back, and you'll be back in business.
Yes.
And
keep your ears open, people, because we are going to be back.
As everyone knows, events coordinators stress out about it, and they drive everybody crazy with their worries and all that stuff. Erica is the exception to that rule. She is so relaxed and trusting, and she gets everything done in an orderly way. So I hope we will be back to cruising and having conferences and all that shortly, but we'll leave that in the hands of God. 888-318-7884, our number here. It's mean to tease me with a cruise, though, when it takes me a minute to remember the COVID. John in New Orleans, Louisiana, watching on YouTube is next. Jimmy Akin is our guest, as you know, John. So your question for Jimmy.
Yes, I have a problem with purgatory because it's unbiblical, and there are examples in the Bible, such as when Jesus told the people on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And then in the Gospel of Luke, the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man did not go to purgatory, and Jesus told his disciples, "Marvel not that the demons are subject to you, but be glad that your names are written in the Lamb's book of life." And in Revelation, at the great
Okay,
white...
John, you're throwing a lot of different things on the table there, and I want to be able to give you a good response. So we got to limit the number of things we're going to talk about, because I can only talk for a few minutes in response to any one given caller. If you have more things that you'd like to talk about, additional objections you have to purgatory or passages that you think disprove it, then you can call again. But I want to make sure that I'm able to give a reasonably substantial response to the different passages that you're mentioning. So, in regard to the first one, well, the word purgatory is not in the Bible, but then there are a lot of terms that are not in the Bible that still reflect biblical realities, like the word original sin. That's not in the Bible. That's a post-biblical theological term, but the idea that the human race fell with Adam and Eve, and that has implications for the rest of us, the doctrine of original sin, that's a biblical teaching, even though the term original sin hadn't been coined yet. Same thing with the term Trinity. The word Trinity is a later doctrinal term, but it reflects a biblical reality. And the word Bible even is one of those, because the word Bible didn't exist when the Bible was being written. The Bible was not bound together as one book for a long time. That's why it has different books in it. So, in terms of purgatory, the Catholic faith would hold that even though the term purgatory was not used in biblical times, it's another term like Trinity or Bible or original sin that reflects biblical principles. And if you want to read about some of those, you can go to Catholic.com, just type in the word purgatory. You'll get some articles that deal with the biblical basis for the principles that apply to purgatory. I'm not going to go through those now, because if I did, I wouldn't have time to address the various passages that you mentioned. But you mentioned, for example, the thief on the cross. Well, there are a number of reasons why the thief on the cross actually does not serve as a disproof for the idea of purgatory. One of them is the simple fact that Greek does not have punctuation. And what Jesus is saying to the thief is ambiguous when he says, I tell you, you will be with me in purgatory. He uses the word, you will be with me in paradise. He uses the word today, but it's unclear in the Greek what that's attached to. It could be that Jesus is saying, I tell you, you will be with me in purgatory, in paradise today, meaning that's when you're going to be there. Or it could be, I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise, emphasizing, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be with me in paradise. Both of those are possible in the Greek. And if Jesus meant the second one of those, it wouldn't mean that the guy was going to be in paradise that day. But let's suppose that is what it means, that the guy's going to be in paradise that day. And there are several other reasons I'm not even going to go into with this, just to keep it short. But the Catholic Church does not teach that purgatory takes time. In fact, if you read Pope Benedict's encyclical, Spe Salvi, on Christian hope, he says we can't measure purgatory in earthly time. And we have various passages like in 1 Corinthians 15:52, where it says that when Jesus comes back, we'll be transformed in the twinkling of an eye. Well, maybe that's how purgatory works. And so maybe the thief on the cross was transformed in the twinkling of an eye. He experienced his purification, which is what purgatory is. He experienced his purification all in a moment that you can't measure, as Pope Benedict said, in earthly time, and thus he could be in paradise with Jesus that day. It doesn't contradict the idea of purgatory. When it comes to another passage that you mentioned, which was the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, well, actually there's a bit of a debate about, is the rich man in hell or in purgatory? My thought, and I've written about this, is that he's in hell. So yeah, I think you're right. The rich man is in hell. The rich man did not go to purgatory. But this is not an exhaustive account of what happens in the afterlife. and this is a parable. It is a limited, partially symbolic view of what happens in the afterlife. It doesn't cover all the details. And so even though this passage does not mention purgatory, that doesn't mean purgatory isn't real. We have other passages that imply, and here's one of them. You'll want to look it up. If you look in 1 Corinthians 3, Paul talks about how when we build on the foundation of Christ and we stand before God in judgment, our works are going to be tested. And he pictures us as like building a building on the foundation of Christ. We can build with good works, like which he compares to gold and silver and precious jewels, or we can build with bad works, which he compares to wood, hay, and straw. And he says the building that we've made is going to be tested by God's fire. And if we have built poorly on the foundation of Jesus, if all we've got is wood, hay, and straw, that fire is going to burn up the building that we're in, and we're going to escape from it, and so we'll be saved, but it'll be like escaping through fire. And so he holds out the prospect of having this experience in the afterlife where we end up experiencing some negative consequences. Even though we're saved, we experience some negative consequences in the afterlife on account of our sins in this life. And thus we're freed from the effects of those sins so we can be saved and go to heaven. That's what purgatory is. So we do have Bible verses that talk about it, or at least the principles that are involved in it. And there are answers to objections that have been made based on various other passages. I was able to deal with a few of them. I know you have more. If you'd like, feel free to call in on another show, and I'll be happy to deal with others.
John, thank you very much. I hope that was helpful to you. Appreciate your call. 888-318-7884. The line's just jammed right now, so we're going to keep moving. Stephen in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania. You are next. Hi, Stephen. You there with us?
Hello. Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Go ahead.
My question, I have a traditional version of the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and I was looking at it, and I saw that some of the hours, the timing of them, like there's one that's at midnight, and then the one after that, I think, is either at 6 a.m. or at like the crack of dawn, or whenever dawn is happening. And I was just wondering, the monks who do that in like the divine office every day, do they only sleep 5 or 6 hours a night, or do they like wake up in the middle of the night to do one of the hours? Like how do they do that, and how do they get normal sleep with that?
So monks have human natures just like the rest of us. They need just as much sleep as we do. And even if they don't necessarily get it all the time, they need to have the same, biologically, they need to have the same amount of sleep that we do. And so my understanding is what they do is they get up in the middle of the night, they say their office or whatever other spiritual activity they may have that they need to do, and then they go back to sleep. And to enable them to do that, monks actually ended up making a technological contribution to our civilization, because originally, if you wanted to keep time at night, you needed to use something like candles. And you could, if you had a candle that would burn at a known rate, you could measure time based on how much of the candle is burned, and you could count how many hours had gone by. But that's not particularly convenient for waking up in the middle of the night, because candles don't wake you up, at least not unless they catch the house on fire, which you don't want. And so monks invented the water clock. And so instead of using a candle, what they found you could do is you could have a reservoir of water with a little bitty hole in it, and it would drip out water at a fixed rate. And as those drips added up, they could turn a crank, which would then engage some gears, and eventually at a time that you specified, it would set off an alarm. So you could get up in the middle of the night and say your prayers as a monk. And so that's actually where we got some of the first alarm clocks. It was the invention of the water clocks specifically so that monks could say their prayers in the middle of the night.
Steve?
Cool, huh?
All right. I'm gonna just go with Steve is a very satisfied customer. Appreciate the call, Steve. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. 888-318-7884 is our number. Open forum means open to anybody, so anyone's welcome to call. It also means you can call with any question that you've got. Jimmy will do his best to get you a good, solid answer. I want to remind you again, Catholic Answers Magazine on sale for just 2 more days. Get your subscription at CatholicAnswersMagazine.com. 1-year subscription, just $30. 2-year subscription, just $50. And that lasts until the last day of this month, which is tomorrow, I think. All right, right back after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
We did it again. We've got great podcast episodes this week for you over at Catholic Answers Focus. Monday's episode is a joyful conversation with Father Hugh Barber about Christian joy. What is it and how can you get it? Then on Wednesday's episode, John DeRosa gives us helpful tips for dealing with the person who says belief in God is just wishful thinking or the opiate of the masses or a crutch for weak minds. You get the idea. Subscribe to Catholic Answers Focus on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast, or visit our website at CatholicAnswersFocus.com. Have you subscribed to the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter? This is Catholic Answers Live host Cy Kellett, and I want to tell you about our new weekly newsletter full of behind-the-scenes information and facts you need to know about the show. It's easy to sign up. Just visit CatholicAnswersLive.com and look for the newsletter sign-up box on the front of the page. It's a great way to keep up to date with what's happening with the show and see what's coming in the days ahead, delivered weekly into your inbox. Sign up today for the Catholic Answers Radio Club newsletter and see what you've been missing. Go to CatholicAnswersLive.com.
Every Catholic has heard the challenge. How can you believe that? Don't you know the Bible says? It's a challenge we have to meet. If we can't reconcile apparent contradictions between Scripture and Catholic teaching, how can our faith survive? And if we can't answer our Protestant brothers and sisters, how will they ever come to embrace the fullness of the faith? In Meeting the Protestant Challenge, apologist Carlo Broussard gives you the knowledge and tools you need to answer 50 of the most common Bible-based objections to Catholicism. Be prepared to give an answer. Order your copy of Meeting the Protestant Challenge today by calling 844-239-4952, visiting shop.catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
And I'm Deacon Harold. The Morning Glory team asks, could you give a gift that keeps on giving?
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
There it is. A little bit of groovy music. Thanks, Nick Chamberlain. Thanks for drumming in that, and then thanks for playing it every Thursday when Jimmy's here. 888-318-7884, our number. It's open forum. It's also Groovy Music Thursday, as you just found out. Up next is Millie in Dallas, Texas. Hang on, Millie. Okay, Millie, are you there with us?
Hi.
Hi, Millie. Your question, please.
Hi. I was wondering how we know, because we have just so many evidence based off the Bible. How do we know that the Bible is the truth in our holy book?
Great question, Millie.
Well,
thank you.
So there's actually a lot to say about that, and there's more than I can say about it than I really have time for at the moment. But to give you a basic sketch, if we approach the Bible, and in particular the New Testament, because that's the period of history we have the most information about, and we start looking to say, well, how well does what we read in the New Testament match up against what we know about this period in history? It matches up very, very well. In fact, there was a historian a little more than 100 years ago who was taught to be skeptical, for example, of the value of the book of Luke and the book of Acts, which were written by the same guy. The Gospel of Luke and Acts were both written by Luke the physician. And he was taught to be skeptical of Luke and think, oh, this isn't real history. But he was a historian, and he decided to do an open-minded study of of Luke, and he said, I'm going to check out everything from history that I can, everything that Luke mentions. If I can find evidence for it or against it, I'm going to look for that and then see how accurate Luke really is. And he expected to find that Luke was not accurate at all. What he found was that Luke is amazingly accurate. There are all kinds of little details in both the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts that are dead on accurate and that could not have been faked, because it's not like today. You couldn't go on the internet and look up, oh, what are the town officials in this city called? You needed to be there to know, oh, what do they call the head officials locally? And Luke is right on case after case after case. And he ended up writing a book where he presented the results of his study, and he concluded that Luke is a world-class historian that belongs to be put up there with the greatest historians outside of the Bible, that he's extremely careful, he's extremely faithful, and he's extremely accurate. And so by taking this kind of evidence-based approach, we can, and what do we know about history, and how do we, how can we confirm various things in the Bible based on what we know from history outside of the Bible? We build a case for the overall reliability of the New Testament. And then once we realize we need to take it seriously, just as a historical document, we need to go further and say, okay, so we know it has this at least broad accuracy as a historical document. It's given us real history about Jesus and so forth. We need to take the miracle claims seriously. And when you start investigating the miracles of Jesus, and especially when you investigate the resurrection of Jesus, you find, hey, we've got really good evidence that Jesus was resurrected. The alternative theories to the resurrection all have problems. The understanding that best makes sense of the evidence we have is Jesus really did rise from the dead. And if so, that's a supernatural act. And that means that the Bible is not just something that has historical value, it's something that has spiritual value in addition to its historical value, and that gives us confidence to make a leap of faith and say, I can trust the Bible even when I can't prove particular things here or there from factors outside the Bible. If you'd like more information about all that, I deal with different aspects of that in my book, A Daily Defense, along with a bunch of other objections to the Christian faith. But that's a basic sketch of how I would argue for the Bible's trustworthiness. The foundation of it is showing that, yes, indeed, the New Testament is valuable just as a set of historical documents. And then once you examine the resurrection of Jesus, it turns out it's valuable also on a supernatural level that gives us even more confidence beyond what you could show from history alone.
Millie, I'd love to send you the book, A Daily Defense. Jimmy, I was also thinking maybe I could send her your DVD, Why You Can Trust the Gospels.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, because your question sounds so sincere, Millie, and I'd love you to have these resources. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can you just hang on the line, and then Erica will get your information, and we'll send you these two. We'll send you A Daily Defense, the book, and then we'll send you the DVD, Why You Can Trust the Gospels. Really appreciate your call, Millie. Thank you so much. Call back as more questions might occur to you. We'd love to take your call again. 888-318-7884, the number here. Dan in Cincinnati, Ohio is next. Dan in Cincinnati, Ohio, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi, Jimmy. I hope I have a good connection. My phone's a little dim, but I'm the guy who talked to you about donating to SQPN and inviting you to Cincinnati for Skyline Chili.
Oh, but nice to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, thanks. My question was going to be about the church's teaching on aliens, since I saw your Facebook page this morning about Jesus blessing the aliens. And then I realized it'd kind of be speculation. So I'd also like to know, I'd probably more like to know about the angels the only thing I know about the angels are the 6 choirs of angels and Mont Michel in France, where St. Michael the Archangel appeared, and then the Bible accounts of Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael. And Ludwig Otz. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ludwig Otz.
Oh, yes.
He's got a little quote about the angels.
What would you like to know about them?
Well, I know there's 6 choirs of them, and it also it says myriads of them. So I don't know how much a myriad is. And well, I think I know basically what their station is, or whatever you want to call it, with the archangels and the guardian angels and that. Let's see.
Okay, let me. We've got a number of issues on the table here, so let me see what I can do to be of assistance. So, in terms of aliens, the church doesn't have a teaching on aliens. There may or may not be aliens. It's just a question of, did God choose to create intelligent life elsewhere? Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. We don't know. What we do know is if he did, well, then they're like us. They're creatures of God. And so presumably he would have some kind of relationship with them. It might or might not be like our relationship with him. But since you mentioned Mysterious World, I'll mention that I actually did an episode on this exact topic a while back. So you can go back into the archives, look up episode 55. And 55 is all devoted to the subject of aliens and theology and the Christian faith and what would it all mean if there was intelligent life out there. And so check out episode 55. In terms of angels, actually there are different numbers of orders or choirs of angels that have been proposed. You'll hear different numbers. Sometimes you'll hear 7, sometimes you'll hear 9. And John Paul II pointed out that the church has never given a definitive list of the angelic hierarchy. So that's an area where people can speculate about exactly how many different kinds of angels are there, exactly how are they ranked, how do they relate to each other. That's something that we don't know for sure. We know there are certain types of angels that we read about, but God hasn't given us a complete detailed description of the angelic world. In terms of myriads, a myriad is 10,000. So when you read about there being myriads of myriads, that's 10,000 times 10,000 or hundreds of millions. And it's not surprising that there would be that many angels because there are more than that number of humans. I mean, currently we're at 7 billion humans that are alive. And so there could be billions or trillions or quadrillions of angels. They didn't have words for that in Greek. And so once they got above 10,000, they would just say something like myriads of myriads, meaning just an uncountably huge number. In terms of a little bit more information about angels and how God's court in heaven works, you're in luck because there is another episode of Mysterious World coming up. It's going to be the first Friday in August, and it's on God and the gods. So I talk about the biblical idea about God and his heavenly hierarchy and how the different kinds of angels work in that hierarchy and what the Bible has to say about that. So it won't be out until the first Friday in August, but check it out. Mysterious World episode on God and the gods, and it's going to go into the angelic hierarchy that God has.
And the first Friday of August is coming right up. So, Dan, perfect timing on that. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Are you going to address that kind of royal we that is in the beginning of the book of Genesis?
I don't in this episode, but I will be in other episodes.
Yeah. Because I think that I heard you explain that once, that one possible way of understanding that is it's referring to a kind of royal court that...
Yes, and that's sometimes called a cohortative we, where it's like, let's us as a cohort do this. But it doesn't mean, or an associative we, but it doesn't mean other people are going to be involved. If I'm going to, let's say we're deciding what we're going to eat, and I'm going to pay for it, I could say, let's get pizza. Even though I'm the one doing the work, I'm the one paying for the pizza, I'm associating you with that decision. And so when God says, let us make man in our image, he's like maybe talking to the angelic hierarchy, but he's the one that's going to do the work, because it makes it clear, you keep reading, God is the one that makes man, not the angels.
All right. I'm looking forward to that one. I am looking forward to that one. 888-318-7884, our number here. Jimmy Akin, our guest. It's open forum. Oh, we've still got that free MP3 from Jimmy Akin, and this is another thing that where you can't get any more for free after this month ends tomorrow. So go to shop.catholic.com. It's a free MP3 on the book of Revelation called Understanding Revelation. Just look for where it says Understanding Revelation, click, and you'll get your free MP3 over at shop.catholic.com.
Your questions, Catholic Answers, live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
St. Hildegard of Bingen was a mystic, an abbess, a botanist, a saint, and a doctor of the Church.
Matthew Bunsen and the Doctors of the Church.
Hildegard had her first visions at the age of 3, which she called the shade of the living light. She later wrote about them in works declared by St. Bernard of Clairvaux to be from God. Pope Benedict XVI agreed when he named her only one of 4 Doctors of the Church who are women in 2012.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
St. Paul's street evangelization isn't like other evangelism you might have seen on the streets. We don't yell, and we don't force anyone to pay attention to us. Instead, St. Paul's street evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic presence to a world hungry for truth. For more information, or to start a chapter of your own, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com. It's time to do our part.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, open forum today. Jimmy Akin, our guest. That's really more fun than you should be allowed to have for 2 hours, but I get to have it, and so do you if you join us. Up next is Aaron in Houston, Texas, who's watching on Facebook. Aaron, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hi.
Hi,
I
Aaron.
wanted to ask about the morality of purchasing something that includes both good and bad elements. So, like, my main example is, like, a gym membership. If it also includes, like, spiritual yoga classes and Tai Chi that you don't intend to partake in, you just want to go to the gym.
Okay, well, that's like buying anything. Anything that's made by human beings is going to have some problematic content in it from one time to another, whether it's a subscription to a TV channel or a cable network or the internet or a gym or whatever it may be, or even just buying a book, So it's a matter of prudence. You have to look at the amount of problematic content and make a prudential judgment. Is it so much problematic content that it would be better for me to use my money on something else that has less problematic content in it? There's no single answer to that. In most cases, if you're not participating in it, in the problematic stuff, and if it's not a major part of, what's going on there, and you will derive benefit from the good parts of it, then it's perfectly fine to go ahead. We don't have to withdraw from the world, which is what you'd have to do if you said, oh, if I ever encounter problematic content in something, I'm going to run away from it. Well, then you'd have to run away from everybody, because everybody is a sinner, and you're going to encounter problematic content from everybody at some point. And so it's really a prudential judgment, and you don't need to be scrupulous about it. If you're not involved in the problematic stuff and it's not a huge chunk of what's going on, then you can subscribe and say, I'm just not going to use that part.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Thanks for holding on there, Aaron. I know we made you wait a long time today. Taylor in Indianapolis is next, watching on YouTube. Taylor, your question for Jimmy Akin.
Hey, Jimmy. So, as a new Catholic coming into the church, this past month,
I've been really trying to be the best Catholic I can be. And part of that is, reading papal documents. And I came across Pope Pius X's document on modernism. And I got kind of confused. So I was wondering if you could explain modernism and as well as kind of how to prevent it in our daily lives.
Okay. Well, so modernism was a movement that got a lot of attention about 100 years ago, and it challenged a variety of different ideas in the Catholic world. And so there were documents that were written against it. There was also, for a time, there was what was called the anti-modernist oath that various Catholics were required to take upon assuming office. Like if you're going to be a pastor or something, or a seminary professor, you would have to take the anti-modernist oath. Basically, modernism doesn't involve a single claim. There were a bunch of different claims that were advocated by modernists, and they all had to do kind of loosely with the idea of we need to update our presentation of the faith for the modern world. And that's not itself a problem, to say we need to present the gospel in a way that people of a given time will understand it. That's just good evangelization. The problem is if you're denying essential elements of the Catholic faith as part of that, that's when it's a problem, because then you're not just presenting the faith in a way that people will respond to. You're actually tampering with the content of the faith. And so modernists made a bunch of proposals, and some of them were clearly contrary to the Catholic faith. Others were not as clearly opposed to it. And so it took a while, and this happened over the course of the 20th century, to sort out those ideas. And so you'll find some early documents that are written, to address the ideas as they were being expressed in their time. And one of the things that's been pointed out with some of these older documents is, there's a famous one called the Syllabus of Errors, which is a section of short propositions that are being condemned. And in order to understand those propositions, you have to go read other documents where they're talked about. And if you don't do that, you'll misunderstand what some of these things are saying. So you have to be kind of careful when you're reading the early anti-modernist literature, because it's easy to take some of it out of context. Over the course of time, the church has had the opportunity, under God's guidance, to evaluate some of the ideas that were being proposed by modernists. And, things are almost never all good or all bad. They're usually somewhere in the middle. And some of the ideas modernists were talking about actually are not problematic, and the church has later ruled that some of these are not problematic, but others were. And so you have to be careful. You have to take things on a case-by-case basis, and you have to not be quick to either embrace or condemn something without looking at what is the church said, having had the opportunity to study this in more detail. The book that I would recommend for you is a book that I wrote called Teaching with Authority. And this is a book about the magisterium of the church and how it teaches and how to read church documents, how to interpret them correctly, how to look at doctrinal development and figure out, is this legitimate or is it not? And it also talks about some of the early anti-modernist documents and what their current status is. And since you mentioned, Taylor, that you're brand new to the Catholic Church, as a confirmation present, I'd like to see if we can send you a free copy of Teaching with Authority.
Let's do it. Taylor, can you hang on a minute and we'll get your address and we'll send you the book?
Absolutely. I appreciate that so much. Thank you, Jimmy.
No problem.
Well, thank you, Taylor. Appreciate that. Just hang on, and Erica will get your information, and then we'll send you the book. It's open forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Matthew, way down in Kokomo, Indiana, next, watching on YouTube. Matthew, your question for Jimmy. Hang on, Matthew. Hang on one second. I messed up. It's getting late in the day. I don't know what I did there, Matthew. Go ahead. Your question for Jimmy.
Okay, so
Me and many of my Catholic friends have a question about Uniatism and Eastern Rite Catholics.
Okay.
We've attended one Eastern Rite Catholic church, and we've been looking into it. And it seems that Eastern Rite Catholic churches accept totally different theology. They accept Eastern theology, essentially. And they venerate Eastern saints like Gregory Palamas, who are condemned as heretics by the Catholic Church. And we were wondering how this squares with the Catholicity of the Church, or whether or not this violates the consistency of the Catholic Church.
Okay. Well, so the Catholic Church is not the Borg. And so we don't all have to have exactly the same views on everything. There is a legitimate diversity. There's room for a legitimate diversity of opinion and a legitimate diversity of styles and emphases. And for the most part, there's not a problem between Eastern and Western Catholicism. The ultimate decider of is something outside the bounds of legitimate diversity, is it outside the bounds or is it acceptable? The ultimate decider of that is the Pope. And the popes historically have decided that it's legitimate to have diversity of opinions on various questions. So you don't have to say, well, you must believe every single thing that is commonly believed in the West. Not every theological question has been settled. And so even though certain ideas theologically are common in the West, the Church has not said this is infallibly the case. In fact, the Church has allowed a difference of opinion on some of them. And so even though an idea may be traditional in the West, that doesn't mean everybody has to accept it, because the popes have determined there's a legitimate diversity of opinion on this question. It has not yet been settled. In terms of practices like liturgical styles, there's room for diversity of liturgical styles as well. There also, even if people were outside of communion at the time, and we should be careful about the word heresy because it tends not to apply to Eastern Christians historically. But even, the more appropriate term in most cases would be a state of schism exists. But even though individuals may not have been in full communion with the Catholic Church when they were alive, the popes have ruled that it's possible for people to be saved in such situations, and it's thus possible that they're in heaven, and it's thus possible in principle to venerate them. And for purposes of fostering devotion, the Catholic Church has not challenged the canonizations of saints that were outside of communion, but presumably in good conscience when they were alive. And in fact, some of them, like Gregory of Narek, are doctors of the Church today. And it's the popes who have declared them to be so, even though Gregory of Narek, for example, I know you mentioned Gregory Palamas, but I'm more familiar with the case of Gregory of Narek, was not in full communion with the Church at the time, but he lived a saintly life. He was apparently in good conscience. He was canonized in Eastern traditions, and he's accepted as a saint by and a doctor of the Church by popes today.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate the call. Sorry we weren't able to get to everybody. Jimmy Akin, thank you again for 2 very fine hours. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.
We gave away, we never gave away the Bible as a Catholic book today, but we gave away Teaching with Authority and A Daily Defense. And Jimmy, you got tomorrow's coming out, Weird Questions, because it's
Weird Questions, 5th. Yeah.
And then on the first Friday in August, it will be
God and the Gods.
God and the Gods, oh yeah.
A discussion of God's heavenly angelic hierarchy.
I'm looking forward to that one. All right, tomorrow, it's going to be open forum for non-Catholics. 2 hours of open forum for non-Catholics. Those are always fun hours. I hope you will join them for us right here on Catholic Answers Live.